I just told you that Trump and his team will start coming up with a flood of ideas aimed at improving the standard of living for American citizens. The first idea was born 2 months ago. That is to share with the low income, with those who suffered the most from the tariffs that Trump introduced, to share with them the revenue from these very tariffs. Like, you ended up being temporary victims of our trade with partners, so here's compensation for the inconvenience that was caused to you. As I mentioned, that's $2,000 per adult and $600 per child. So for a family, a typical family with 2 adults and 2 children, that would be $5,200. That's a pretty good amount. And these are dividends, so to speak, from the profit, from the turnover, let's put it that way. So it's pretty good for lifting the spirits of people with low incomes. And this wasn't taken from others to give to them. This is part of the earnings obtained from carrying out reforms and compensation for those who were affected. But of course, Trump's team didn't stop there. Yesterday, there was news about an even more powerful move by the pro-capitalist government. So, as part of the big, beautiful law, remember the big, beautiful bill that was passed by? Well, the Senate, Congress, Trump signed it, Trump initiated it. And in the United States, special accounts are being opened in the name of all children from families with incomes below a certain level. There's a certain threshold, they calculated it, so if children are born starting from January 1, 2025 and onward, $1,000 will be deposited into each of these accounts from the money earned from trade tariffs. These are accounts from which no taxes will be taken. Parents and relatives can contribute, so to speak, at up to $5,000 there each year, and no taxes will be taken from that money either. When each of these children turns 18, that is, the ones for whom the accounts are opened, they will have accumulated capital. Now we'll talk about exactly what kind of capital this is, which they can use for education, starting a business, or buying a house. I believe these are the 3 main goals, but there are others beyond parents. So both individuals and corporations can contribute funds to these accounts, and they can deduct these amounts from their taxes. Today, the owner of Dell announced that he is giving the children of America a gift of $6.2 billion, and this money will be distributed among children's accounts. So, accordingly, you won't be able to squander or waste this money at 18 because, as I already said, it's designated strictly for education, starting a business, or buying real estate. There will also be free access to funds. It's their money, but starting from age 25, these accounts were already called Trump accounts. And it is assumed that the poor, meaning those people who can't fund children's accounts themselves, will receive help from commercial enterprises, something like that. So this is real charity, and it's designed specifically to help children from needy families take their first steps in life, no matter which direction they choose. The launch of the Trump Accounts portal is expected, where parents will be able to check their child's eligibility. So to receive this, you need to apply using Form 4547. Can you guess why it's called that? 4547 means to track the status and receive instructions and reports. Additionally, at the state level, it is proposed to provide for the poor. Well, actually, the range is from $500 to $50,000, depending on the family situation. Maybe there's a disability, a child, and so on and so forth. What do you mean? Well, that will be a one-time payment. In Connecticut, for instance, they've set the amount at $6,000 to $7,000 per child. Well, let's do the math. Now, $1,000 from the federal government, plus let's say $6,500 from the state, between 6 and 7, right? So that's $7,500 at 7% annual interest. As stated in the announcement, for 18 years, so on their 18th birthday, the former child, now a teenager, finds out that they have $25,350 in the bank. It's pretty nice to get that amount for education, let's say, or to get something special with it. And what if parents, friends, relatives, or even some corporate donors contribute to this account and write it off on their taxes? Yeah, let's say $400 a month then. An 18-year-old teenager has $174,000 in the bank as starting capital at age 18. Ladies and gentlemen, he can use it until age 25 for education, real estate, or starting a business. If his parents and friends contribute, well, let's say they can't, they contribute $400. Yes, $100 a month is practically nothing. Well, almost nothing. Families who can't afford to set aside $100 a month for their child, then by the time they're 18, they'll have $44,200 in their account. Well, it's an amazing opportunity, so to speak, for any young man or woman at 18 or 25 years old to get started. Life. In my opinion, it's a very good idea and actually quite accessible. Thank you all. Trump started calling himself, well, on the 6th. Sorry, not in January, but on November 6th. January 6th is a completely different date. Yes, that's what I mean. Since 2025, he started calling himself the president of affordable prices. He is working on lowering drug prices, promoting the idea of a 50-year mortgage loan instead of the current maximum of 30 years. So what does this mean, just so you understand? What does a 50-year mortgage give you instead of a 30-year one? A reduction in monthly payments by $200, $300 might not be much for some, but it could be crucial for others. But the main idea that Trump's team is promoting is the complete elimination of all federal taxes on citizens' earnings. Let's say, for example, 2 adults earn per year. Let's say $150,000, which isn't much by today's standards, and they pay to the federal budget $16,000 more they pay to the city, to the county, to the state, so to speak. Yes, but what can Trump actually do to the feds? $16,000. If a couple earns $300,000 a year before taxes, which is already a good salary, the feds will take $50,000 from them. If you don't take this money from people, first of all, a lot more money will go into investments, meaning they'll save it in accounts, set it aside, just invest, build businesses, expand their businesses. It's been shown repeatedly that when people have more money, they quickly invest it in businesses. And secondly, thousands of idiotic projects will disappear, invented for one purpose: to take money from those who earn it and give it to officials. The state apparatus, therefore, will shrink several times, and when there is no need to collect a huge amount of money from everyone, the same tax authorities and many others will also shrink. I don't know, state agencies, departments, ministries. So the amount of real estate will decrease. There will be no point in keeping it if no one works there. Yes, only the expenses necessary for the main role of the state will remain. And what is the main role of the state? To protect the population, property, and territories, and to ensure the enforcement of laws adopted in this society, in this state. But even criminal law will change. And all that will matter is how much the life and property of the property owner are affected. Let's say your car was stolen. Maybe it was damaged a bit. Someone drove it around for a week. Then the thief was caught and the car was found damaged. Today, part of your losses is covered by the insurance company, but then they raise your and others' monthly premiums and you end up actually paying for the repair costs of your car. It's just spread out among many people, so you don't notice it. Plus, you paid for the police who were looking for the thief, and you also pay for his upkeep in prison. The judges, the entire court, the guards' pensions in the court, and then the thief's upkeep in prison if he's sentenced. Well, that happens quite rarely. Well, let's imagine, so he spent a couple of months there at your expense. And then he got out and continued stealing, and you paid for all of that? Even if you didn't find out about it and think that some insurance company or the state is paying, It's actually the state that gives the money, and when all the tax stuff is over, that's how it works, on a self-supporting basis. The thief will have to return to you, through the insurance company, the cost of repairing the car, the cost of catching the thief, the cost of the trial and detention, plus a fine for the offense, which the court will impose. Accordingly, the cost of the court, the judge, the building, heating, and everything else also becomes the criminal's debt. He either pays his debt if he has the means, and if he doesn't, then he works off his debt with interest. If he owes $530,000, they say, "We're processing the case. Now you owe $530,000 plus 5% annual interest." And he either works at his own job with some guarantee that he won't run away where automatic deductions are made, or he's in prison, paying for his upkeep and his debts with his labor at the same time. If he doesn't want to work, then he doesn't eat. If you don't work, you don't eat. Finally, this principle will be put into practice. Yes, for serious crimes, including murder, the system will be different, more complicated. But for property crimes, that is material ones, it will be simpler. Material damage, where is it? Yes, that's 99.7% of all crimes in the United States. So it's simple. Either work it off or pay compensation, meaning the damage caused plus a fine. It's all very simple. Okay, let's go back to taxes, duties, and where the money goes over the course of a century. Any funds that come into the Treasury. I don't know what happened more than 100 years ago. That's why I'm talking about the last 100 years. So they were directed toward new projects either in our country or abroad, usually having no impact on the lives and well-being of the citizens, that is, the people from whom this money was taken. For the first time in my memory, it's not about tax refunds like what happened under Bush, but rather dividends to citizens from the profits gained by the government. Moreover, they are going specifically to those who suffered from the price increases. I believe this is an unprecedented action. In the Big Beautiful Bill again, Big Beautiful Bill I'm quoting here, it also says that the government will stop subsidizing electric cars, which will save us about $190 billion over 10 years. So from every lousy sheep, a bit of wool. Does that mean we'll have a coat? At the same time, Trump announced on Wednesday a lowering of air pollution standards for cars, which, well, not immediately, but in about 2 to 3 years will lead to a decrease in the cost of gasoline cars. Here it's $100, there $50, somewhere else $75, and life becomes noticeably more affordable. By the way, this is an appeal to the residents of New York and other large cities, where life in the central areas is becoming, as they say, unbearably expensive. Yes, well, just too expensive for them. If apartment prices are rising, if cheap stores are disappearing in the places where you live, if Rolls-Royces and Ferraris start parking around you, you have 3 options. Earn more and pay the higher prices, lock yourself inside your apartment, barricade yourself, and die of hunger while crying. Or the third option is to move somewhere you can afford to live. And if there's no work on the outskirts of your city, or if it's still too expensive for you, the outskirts aren't that cheap anymore either, then you just need to move there, to the state where workers are needed. Let me tell you, that's North and South Asia, that's Dakota, Nebraska, Alabama, Utah, Montana, Maryland, and about 10 other states where they are waiting for you and will help you move and find a job. They need workers. Many United States are experiencing a shortage of labor, especially in healthcare, construction, food service, transportation, and hotels. I don't remember the rest. There is a huge shortage of nurses and caregivers, so in healthcare, yes, and also medical and health managers. They are always needed by the hundreds of thousands. There are hundreds of thousands of job openings. So don't demand to take money away from those who studied, got their qualifications, worked hard, started their own businesses, and took risks just to have them robbed and given to you because you didn't want to do any of that. Still, you want to live better than you can afford, and you convince yourself that it's your right to receive what was taken from others. Since you don't want to move to Maine or Wyoming, so you can't be asked to relocate, but it's okay to rob us because of your laziness or foolishness. Reminds me of Ukraine. We weren't preparing for war. We were singing, dancing, we were stealing, and then when we were attacked, we're outraged. What are we outraged about? That no one is protecting us. Just like them, I mean, we shouldn't be ashamed. But the Ukrainians are suffering, so we are obligated. It's the same here. If I'm not doing well, it means I'm not making enough money. I only studied enough to serve food at McDonald's, and that's why you owe me. Okay, you have to give us what you have because we wanted to sing and dance instead of preparing. Well, in one case, it's preparing for war. In another case, it's preparing for a profession that pays more. And young people go and work, deliver things while they're studying or doing something, and then they get a profession and move on. You remember that famous tower, right? Actually from Aesop, which Russians, as always, attribute to the translator named Ivan Krylov. For your information, ladies and gentlemen, don't teach. And the plot was invented by the Greek fabulist, then reworked by Jacques La Fontaine, who, by the way, was also not Russian. And then in La Fontaine's version, it came to Russia in French, of course, and was translated into the language of the Russian common people. But the cicada, which Aesop invented, remained a dragonfly. But I think it was more for the sake of rhyme than to change the essence or the image. The next year of life in the United States of America will be under the motto, reducing spending and expenses and raising the standard of living. Just as a fever is a signal of problems in the body, the November elections of this year in the United States of America showed a problem in the consciousness of the country's population. That is, the problem is the feeling that the Trump administration is dealing more with foreign affairs than with our internal problems. Trump is faced with a task, and he will solve it. He has an impressive track record of solving problems and taking on challenges. And I'm sure that by the end of spring 2026, we'll feel prices going down, incomes going up, and the standard of living for Americans noticeably rising. Until next time.